All right, thank you for choosing the Minority Alliance Organization meeting today. Today we'll be discussing a recap over the Georgia debates that occurred this weekend. Also, we'll be speaking on 5 things we feel within the minority community that we feel the government should make a little bit more effort in assisting us on correcting within our community. Also, 5 things that we feel personally each that within our communities ourselves as minorities that we should work on to fix for ourselves and people in our own communities. Now, when speaking on the Georgia debate that occurred this week, we actually did a full analysis and profile for each candidate last week in our meeting, speaking on what they have to offer for minority communities and minorities in general. And basically, when it came down to it, the 2 debates, one which didn't really occur because you had a candidate who didn't even show up, and then the other one was basically just uh, it was basically a to put into stone a lot of the things we were discussing last week. How Loeffler came out and her stance was the same way that her stance has been from the beginning. She will continue to back Trump. She will continue to not go ahead and ask Trump to secede to Joe Biden and not admit that Joe Biden has won the election, and to call Warnock basically a radical, and then the whole name calling thing instead of debating your stance on where you stand on each of these topics that were being debated over. Basically, to say she kept trying to uh, flip the script on, you know, Warnock is just a radical pastor who is trying to come in and um, he's a Castro lover and a socialist, and it's just basically the name calling, the blame game. So instead of us seeing, it being an opportunity for her to see her real platform and things that she's willing to run on and her policy that she's willing to bring to the table, we saw a lot of the same things that we've continued to see this whole process. So my issue is, um, at this point, I think everybody's mind should be made up. I believe that everybody should have a full viewpoint for themselves on which way they are aiming to vote coming up here in January. And I mean, with Warnock, honestly, as always, uh, I was very happy with his stance of coming and actually speaking and talking about the things, whether it's the same stuff as we said, it's being the same song at this point because we keep continuing to see the ads, we keep continuing to see the same things. But he continued to defend his stances and his positions on everything that he's running behind as far as the healthcare issues and the economic inequality that we see all throughout our neighborhoods here in our different communities here in Georgia. Now, Mark, my question to you is, I mean, further than what we discussed last week, is there any difference that you saw in the debates that occurred this week?
Well, I can tell you that the only thing that's different from what I saw last week is the how an idea can become even more solid the more evidence that you get. When I look at the race in Georgia, and obviously I don't live in Georgia, so not being there, I did consume as much as I could. I've seen the ads and I've kind of seen some of the things that are going on, and I've watched the debates and things like that to get a real sense and a feel for the candidates and what's going on. And one of the things that strikes me is we need to take a real evaluation of who do these politicians work for. And the interesting thing that I think of when I think of this is that they are supposed to work for the people, because without the people, without the votes of the people, they don't get to these offices and they don't get to do what it is that they do. But they've taken orders from a much smaller group, a much smaller contingent of those of that electorate, and those are those are the people that have, donated to their campaigns, that set up these agendas and things like that. And, when we look at someone who tries to come along and shake up the status quo, when you see someone who tries to do things a little bit different, one of the things I look for is, who is it that they're working with to get where they want to go. And one of the things that I found to be, tremendous about, both the Reverend Warnock and for John Ossoff is their ability to get their hands dirty, working actually in the community, coming from the community, and, actually sitting down and talking with people, going over plans, and actually getting and sitting down at the table with the constituents who have the issues. Let's make no mistake, when you're having, $10,000 a plate fundraisers, the issues that you find in that room are not the same issues that you found at Ebenezer Baptist Church. They are not the same. So being able to speak to those issues directly, cleanly, clearly, individualized arguments about the direction that you want to take a community and that you want to take the country in, and understanding that we can no longer afford to be a buzzword society. A lot of people have made a lot of headway making us a buzzword society, and we've been able to drop scarlet letters on people just by, whereas you go back 300 years, you could call somebody a witch, and that was pretty much it for them. Now, we use words like radical. We use words like socialist. We go to a conservative vending machine and we put in our token and we get out the names that we can call someone. And, that turns a lot of people's ears off to the issues that they're trying to do. And it ends up forcing people to vote against their own self-interest. We have people who really desperately need the type of help that we're looking to get from progressing the system forward and moving the system forward, and recognizing the inequalities that minority communities are dealing with and that other communities are dealing with, and dealing with the wealth gap and dealing with corporations and jobs. I think realizing where that money went for the small business, protection loans that were supposed to be going out to small businesses, and seeing where that actually went, that's a really big deal. That's a huge problem. And both Purdue and Loeffler were there for that, and there needs to be an accounting and a reckoning for not helping people in a time like this where that help is so desperately needed. So I think, just to kind of summarize where things are at, because you are correct. I believe most people have made up their minds on where they want to place their vote, and whether they've done that, whether they're just being tribal, whether they've actually thought out the issues and decided for themselves that one way or the other is what they wanted, or if there's some sort of traditionalist vote involved here, or if it's even racial. Whatever reason people have, they've made their decision for the most part. But for the few people who haven't, and for the few people that are still open to allowing information to sum up their point of view, not just those other factors that I've already spoken of, this is an opportunity to really pay attention to what is important to you. And are buzzwords really enough to sway your decision one way or the other, or are the issues themselves and the ability to attack these issues going to be the thing that sways you? We just hope, above all other things, that we do not lose the energy that we saw, because one way or the other, forget all of the rhetoric and all the trash being spewed about this past election, to have the type of turnout that we saw, and the type of minority turnout that we saw, that there was a tremendous amount of energy for what you felt was right. And we need to maintain that energy. And for the people of the state of Georgia, we need to maintain that energy, because there are people who still, to this day, just as much as they were the rest of the year leading up to November 3rd. There are people who are greatly invested in keeping vote turnout low or molding vote turnout. They don't buy these ads. They don't spend hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars on ad buys because they don't think they're effective. It's because they do. It's because imagery and traditionalist thinking and the buzzwords are enough to sway ideas towards the ideologue instead of the ideology of what it is that we need. And I hope that people, one way or the other, whichever way you decide, that you're voting with your heart and that you're voting with your issues on your sleeve up front and holding to account the people who are looking for that job and the people who have that job and whether or not they deserve that job moving forward based on your need and that person's ability to deliver that need to you. You need to have a vested interest in our government, and our government needs to have a vested interest in you. So there should be some thought to that as you head out to the polls in January.
Yes, sir. And I'll say this much with the few gridlocks that we still see with Congress heading out into the end of the year, especially when it's people, all over the nation, uh, basically waiting for Congress to make certain decisions that have been affecting their lives for the past few months and making their lives a little bit harder, especially in minority communities over any other community. That's what makes this election one of the most important elections overall, because this actually determines which way, the Congress and the Senate majority will sit in the long run, and if we'll have enough power as a majority to push laws through to actually see progression and things of that nature. Because let's say, Congress or the Senate remains entirely how it is right now, and we can't even get a stimulus bill, through to actually help people, where it's total disagreement on both sides of the aisle. You know, how much easier would it be to get an actual healthcare bill done? Other bills that we see that are entirely more, as you say, uh, more disagreement in those aspects than a simple stimulus getting done. That people are going into Christmas and their families are hungry, and you have different areas where people were still sleeping out on the street, and there's been no assistance from uh, the Senate. Basically, is the one that's been holding up, the bill. That there's been a bill on the table since I believe September, that Congress has actually already passed, but the Senate can't seem to get their side of the deal done. So that's the most important things we're looking at with this vote here. I mean, even over, what they have to offer to Georgia, this election is huge to the nation, because this basically determines on our next steps going forward in progression, things that we can actually get done and get accomplished, especially with minorities, things that we've been asking for all over the year. Uh, Trust you me, we'll see these things being tabled and continue to be tabled over the next 4 years, and there will be no progress if we do not make the right decisions now going into the Senate election.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And actually, the House passed the stimulus bill in May. So it's actually been sitting. This is the 12th month of the year. It's actually been sitting, waiting for to be voted on. It's been tabled for 7 months already. And everyone needs to think about it like this. We have a situation now where the COVID issue is worse now than it has been at any point this year. It is worse than it was when things were shut down and Congress passed the emergency bill to pay people basically to stay home, because that's what they felt was the best thing at the time. And now we're in a situation where that is actually worse, and we need that now more than ever. And the damage that could be done to the small business and to the minority owned business can be irreparable if there isn't leadership made at this point and if there isn't sacrifice made at this point. And so far, that has proven, they've proven to be unwilling to do that. And this sort of gridlock can keep things from ever happening. And the more time that goes off the clock, that's more families getting evicted. That's more families who work a full-time job but standing in a 4-hour food line because they still can't feed their families. And it's people who ignore health problems as they get worse and worse because they simply don't have the money to deal with it, or the people who would take chances and give themselves COVID or give family members COVID because they feel they have no choice but to continue to go out there and continue to expose themselves. There are serious problems that are table side issues for every single one of us. And if we're not hearing that from those politicians, especially the two incumbents that we have and or the two challengers that we have, we have to take that into account. This is, again, not a time for tribalism. There will be plenty of time for tribalism later, which is a nasty habit that this country needs to break in the first place. We have to be able to, vote with our minds and our hearts and our ears, and we have to, feel out what's going on and not just throw in our lot because someone was able to use the trigger words that, kind of, oh no, I don't like that, so I'm just going to vote no, no matter what I hear next or no matter what evidence comes out on the other side. That can't be the way we do business anymore. We've gotten into a situation where we are the richest country in the world with the worst results in the world for its citizens. That did not happen by accident. We have to recognize that and then start doing the work to get away from it, because a lot of work was done to get us into it. And again, we have an opportunity in January for the people of Georgia to send that message and make that statement one way or another, how this is going to go, because regardless of how anybody feels about it or what they think, how things are going to go greatly depends on whether or not the citizens of Georgia are able, starting on December 14th, leading up to January 5th, their ability to get up, make their voices heard, cut through the noise, cut through the ads, make your selections, fill out your paperwork if you're doing absentee, go to the places you need to go if you're going in person, and to get this thing done. Because it's not just your future, but it's the future of the U.S. moving forward.
Yes, sir. And last thing on the debate and the things, uh, a couple things I was expecting, beyond Purdue actually, showing up to debate and, at least letting his points be put to the test, and letting us actually, as Georgians, hear his stance on a lot of policies that we are looking to get passed. I was looking for Loeffler and Purdue, being the incumbents, to actually come to the debates and discuss their stance on the current COVID situation and ways that they can actually bring us out as Georgians, out of this COVID situation going into next year. Because as you said, especially a lot of minority businesses, which are mostly the smaller businesses and the larger aspect, going into next year, it's going to be tough rebounding from a year of total loss in a business aspect. As an entrepreneur myself, your first year of business is usually you make no profit, and this total year of COVID has seen a lot of these small businesses not see any profit. So it basically put them back to square one of that year one of starting their business. And next year is going to need to be a year of them actually seeing revenue come in through their businesses so that their business could sustain going forward. And that's the kind of talks that I was actually looking for, more so in the debates than anything else. And us not seeing that, I mean, it kind of still has me, well, not seeing it from the incumbents more so than anything. It should kind of basically put everybody's view on who you should be voting for and who can actually help us get out of this COVID situation going into next year to actually see our economy in Georgia thrive the way it needs to. And I mean, where we're primed to, because Georgia before 2020, we've been building up to a point to where Georgia is becoming one of the biggest hubs in the southern part of the United States. And, COVID should not be from a pandemic something that sets us back 3 years instead of us rebounding next year to get back to the point that we were prior to.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. No, I totally agree with everything you just said there, and I would the last thing I would add on this is these are serious issues with no solution on the table. No solution has been made, and there's so much more to do. And as a voter, do you feel respected by your incumbent or your challengers based on what you've seen from them? You know, David Perdue didn't show up to the debate. He didn't, as important as this is, he's basically, throwing it out there that I've made my case. I don't need to say anything else to my constituents. I don't need to say anything else to my voters. I don't need to say anything else to anyone that's on the fence or anyone that's hurting. I don't need to give you reassurance that I see what you're going through and that I'm going to help you. I'm going to help your small business. I'm going to help your family. I'm going to help you feel safe when you walk the streets. I'm going to help you not fear for your life if red and blue lights come on behind your car when you're driving down a road at night. I'm going to help you with all those different things. No one got any of that when somebody decides not to even show up for a debate. You have an opportunity to talk to the people. That's the true nature of a debate, is to talk and to put your feelings known on, on the issues, on the subject matter for the people. And although, like I said, I'm not that enthusiastic with the fact that Kelly Loeffler didn't speak to those issues. She at least spoke, and that's more than what we got from Purdue. So maybe he feels that the constituents that he wanted to reach, he already reached, and therefore didn't need to reach them again. That could be, from his perspective, a fair idea. I don't know. I just know that for the voters themselves, that's kind of an opportunity to tell you what, I see you, I hear you, I got you, and it wasn't there.
yes, sir. And this week, I know you sent me basically a couple of things that you felt we needed to look over, especially with coming to a close of the year and things that we've actually been talking about over the past few months, but to kind of compile it all. And I mean, a lot of these things that I probably put on my list here are a lot of things that we have discussed in different meetings over the past few months. So, as I said, I will reference people to go back and actually go over, the videos that and the meetings that we have compiled, over whether it's through the YouTube page or through one of our other links, and actually sit and listen to things that we actually discussed and moving our communities forward and things of that nature. Now, you asked me to list 5 things I felt the government could do per the minority community to actually help us in our endeavor to progress and actually move the needle forward. And on my list of 5 things, I put the number one thing overall, which was the thing I guess that put the spotlight, and which there should still be a spotlight with it continuing to happen. I believe towards the weekend, the end of last week, we saw another incident of police brutality. Where young black men was actually killed at the hands of police again. And it seems to be a continuous cycle. And instead of, it's like people, I guess, at this point grow numb to it. Instead of it still being, protesters out on the street, it's like, well, I guess Biden's won. I guess, we're moving in the right direction. We'll handle it when we get there. No, it's not a handle it when we get there. It's things that we need to continue to keep pressure on to continue to move the needle forward and not let up until we see total full equality across the board in a lot of these issues. So from the government, police brutality is one of the things, number one on the list, that we need to attack, and that we need to see governmental policy and measures be laid out going into next year. Especially, as I said, I believe about 3 weeks ago, we had a conversation. I said, you know, within Biden's first few months of his administration, things that I'm looking to see him get done, police brutality should be at the top of the list. That we should make policies to where these occurrences are not happening, you know, at all, but especially not at the rate that we've seen in 2020. Um, my number two on my list was minority business loans. With my knowledge, it's a ton of minorities all over the nation who have the mental capacity, the know-how, the ability to start their own businesses, to actually be able to make something more for their families and things of that such. But it's more difficult 9 times out of 10 for them to get the same loans as other ethnicities, and even when it comes to foreigners coming over to America, it's easier for a foreigner to get a business loan than it is for a minority American to get a business loan to be able to start their own business and be able to make something um, for their family, instead of taking a, an everyday run of the mill job that it seems to be a cycle to where they can't get out of the cycle, and then their kids end up in the same areas where they can't get out of the cycle, and we continue on in this aspect. So when it comes to things that the government can help us out with overall, minority business loans should be somewhere, higher on the list. Of course, we want to attack things like police brutality and healthcare inequality are two of the number ones, I would say. But minority business loans is somewhere in the top five that, for me, on things that we need to attack to be able to offer the same equality across the board within minority communities. And as I said, healthcare inequality. Uh, when you look in minority communities all across the nation, period, uh, minorities are the least, uh, have the least amount of people actually who have healthcare coverage. And, I know me and you have similar belief when it comes to healthcare, that it should be something that as a citizen, you should naturally have healthcare. Now, whether you have a premium version or, a version that you can get instant, additions to what you have going on. There should be at least a base health care across the board for all people, not just minorities, but especially when we talk about minorities, when they've been facing, they say COVID has been uh, at a higher numbers within minority communities. But yet, what can most minorities do when, if I got to go get tested, if I got to go, you know, have these things taken care of, and I don't actually have health care? So that's something I would say, would range around number two for me on things that we need to attack at the governmental level for minorities and minority communities. Uh, rep- Representation inequality was number three for me, because I feel like, Biden has made a huge leap forward with minority representation within his administration, which, me and you had a discussion when he first named a couple of people into his cabinet. And I told you, I still was unhappy with the couple people that he named, because for me, it was still not enough minorities being represented throughout that cabinet. And not just within the Biden administration going forward, we should be seeing a push for minority representation at the local level, at the state level, at every level of our government, to represent us when it comes to laws that will affect us as they will affect everybody else. Um, and the last thing at the governmental level that I feel that they can help us along in making progression is the financial divide, uh, especially within the African American community. The financial gap is huge. Uh, it's basically either there's a top 1% within our own communities, and then if you're not in that top 1%, 9 times out of 10 you're in the below middle class percentage, which is very unacceptable. And these are things that we need to see avenues made at the governmental level to actually help us progress in, especially on the financial side, to where people can take care of their families without having to worry about where they're going to get their next meal, how they're going to pay their next bill, and, living check to check and things of that nature.
Absolutely, and I think every single one of those is important. Some of the ones that I have that are, and they overlap a little bit, but not too much, actually. And I don't have mine in any particular order. I don't think you did either. But just going through of things that I would like to see from the government moving forward. One of them, I believe, is being handled right now, and that is having a cabinet for this new administration being picked that actually represents America, that actually represents the fact that we have such a presence. The minority community has such a presence, and for African American representation, along with other representation, whether it be LGBT, Hispanic, Asian, all different sorts of representation needs to be brought to the forefront in an administration where we're looking to make actual change for each one of those communities. And it did start off a little bit slow. He's definitely picked up steam with some of these later picks as we've gone along. And there's some people there who have some general experiences. I mean, there are some people who are obviously like legacy picks and things like that. I mean, obviously, no, none of that's going to be perfect. What we wanted was better than the usual and better than the status quo. So that's definitely something I'm looking to see continue. I want to see actual movement on the issues. We have legitimate issues that are so difficult and so pervasive in the minority community. Obviously, the way that we're dealing with police and the way that we're dealing with criminal justice reform, the inequality that we're seeing in employment, wealth, pay, salary pay, the ability to get business loans, the ability to get home loans, the predatory nature of the U.S. credit system. And these are issues that a lot of people, that are now about to move into power have spoken on. And I want to see, not just in the first 100 days, but in the first 365 days. What kind of movement are we getting on those issues? What kind of sustainable, kind of legitimate, sink your teeth into policy movement can we see on those issues? Number three for me is stop the slide. And what I mean by stop the slide is that real action needs to be taken to stop the decline. Again, we're watching too many, African American young men and women, enter an encounter with law enforcement and come out in a bag. There's too much of that. There is, too much as far as our ability to open and maintain a business. And it's not just simply the pitfalls of a free market economy where you have the ability to either sink or swim. That's fine if you get a legitimate chance to actually get into the water in the first place. And we're not seeing that on a massive level in the minority community, and it's ever shrinking. And especially with COVID going on, that causes that shrink to go even faster. So we definitely need to see some policies that stops that backward slide that we're seeing when it comes to these things. Number four is creating something that lasts. It is one thing to be able to put in some policies. It is another to be able to put some things out there that are not just going to die with the next administration. And the way that I think that gets done is not just by putting in not just policies, but bringing people up and actually, having candidates step up and having support go through the community so that people can be chosen from among the community to really create some lasting change. And the youth movement that we have been seeing is great, but we want to make sure that momentum continues and it actually becomes the roots of this next forest that we want to see when it comes to the governance that the minority community desperately needs. And then the last thing is the removing of obstacles. There are so many different things that stand in our way from being able to participate truly in the American dream that people like to bring up in campaign stump speeches. But I don't hear a lot of speeches about what they're going to do to take away the roadblocks, the stumbling blocks, and the speed bumps that keep a person from our communities and from many other communities from being able to step up and get that dream. For some people, it's luck. So for some people, it's the sacrifice of getting that higher education, going into horrific debt to get that education, and being able to make something of yourself that way through just pure hard work, grit, and hopefully you don't hit one of those pitfalls on the way to that destination. But there needs to be more effort for a country as powerful as the United States of America to be able to give its children the actual chance to step up and a chance to participate in this world and a chance to actually chase those dreams as as it was suggested and as we project to the world that it is. That image took a hit over the last few years, and we have a chance to actually not only get that image back, but to actually live up to it for perhaps the first time in its history. Because right now, in the minority community, the American dream means something else. And we need to recognize that, obviously for groups like this one and many others that are working at the ground level, they see it and they feel it, they know it because they actually touch it or they live amongst it. But for those who are in Washington, for those who are, going through these, a couple $100 million cycles of fundraising and ad buys, do they feel it? Do they see it? So, and are they willing to do the work that is going to help remove those obstacles so that we can, continue to move forward and be a part of this and not be taken, not have those things taken away and then someone turn around and, do a 5-minute bit on a news show talking about how, pulling yourself up by the bootstraps is going to get us there. So those are the things that I'm definitely looking forward from our government moving forward, and I'm hoping that we see that.
Yes, sir. And then for me, when it comes to 5 things within the minority communities that we can actually, as minorities, make effort to fix ourselves. The number one thing overall, up, down, there in between, is the thing that we need to attack as immediately as that should have been done yesterday, if that's possible, is the crimes against one another. As we've talked about, I believe about 2 weeks ago, we had a discussion about we continue to kill off one another at a higher rate, even than we see police brutality against us and minority communities. So one thing that we need to attack right off the get go is against one another. We must have a little bit more patience. We must have a little bit more, compassion to one another, and actually, not be added to. If you want to see it as attacking gun violence and things of that nature, gun violence, especially within our neighborhoods, when you got 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds running around with pistols in their waistband and things of that nature, we should not, continue to see these things. I don't know if it comes from, the music industry, from what people see on TV, from the games being played. I don't know where it comes from, but these are things that we need to attack with each other, because it's nothing cool and it's nothing all right about taking another minority's life. But yet we get up and we protest police brutality when an officer kills one of us, or things of that nature. So that's the number one thing that within inner minority community, that we need to attack off the get go. Number one over anything else. Community involvement reigns pretty high in the same breath, because I believe, what was it, late 90s, early 2000s, you would see a lot more community involvement within minority communities, a lot more comfort within minority communities for us to do for one another, because we realized, nobody else was going to do for us. So I believe that we need to bring back that same energy, within our own communities, of being involved and being able to lift one another up when we see each other fall and things of that nature. Minority business support. I know through the organization, since we started, anytime, one of us comes across a certain minority business that we see that we feel, should be spotlighted, or, we'll put up a post, or we'll try to put a little spotlight on what they have going on to be able to generate us doing work with each other, us supporting one another, us spending our money with one another, instead of going all the way out of our community or uh, spending money with a different ethnicity that they take that money back to their own community and it circulates within their community, but it's not circulating within our community. So minority business support within one another is a thing that I think that should be a little bit at the top of our list on things that we should be attacking that we can actually within our own communities take the lead on and doing for one another. Um, inner minority racism, which was a word when you asked me to come up with this list, was something that I actually came across because from the get go when we started this organization, one of the things that we actually stated is the minority community consists more of than African American individuals. The minority community consists of uh, anyone who feels financially that you're a minority, whether you feel you're a minority because of your race, the minority community consists of more than just African Americans. So, inner minority racism, where you'll see somebody who's also a minority and you'll treat them a certain way, you know, just because they don't necessarily have the same exact race as you. These are things that we need to attack within our own community. And as I said, I'm huge on, uplifting one another, up, down, there in between. If you're a minority, I want to see you do well. And that's the thing that on why we actually begin this organization in the first place. As I said, I believe a lot of these things that we're discussing now, you can go back to a ton of our earlier videos and actually listen to. And we did I believe, a whole discussion on this. I didn't give it this term at the time, but on this specific ideology that the minority community is full of different colors, is full of different types of people, and we should be assisting one another within our communities. And we should not be tearing each other down, or there should not be racism within our own communities when we got to face racism once we get outside of our communities already. Um, and the last thing on my list that I had was a correction in parenting habits on the way that we raise our children. Uh, when you look at other communities and more children who have an opportunity at being successful versus us continuing cycles over and over again, which I said yet again, we have a full conversation discussion that we did on parenting, and then we have another one that we delve a little bit deeper into parenting. So things that we need to correct within our own communities is our parenting habits and the way that we raise our kids and give them better opportunity at success, from the get-go, instead of hindering them or putting them in situations to where they will continue being in the same cycles that we have already been in. So these are things that I feel, 5 issues that we could nip in the bud ourselves, from the ground level to be able to see equality across the board uh, in every aspect of our lives.
Absolutely. And those are, 5 fantastic things to look forward to, in the minority community. For my list, I wanted to attack things from a standpoint of understanding. I have 5 things that I want, that I would really love to see, the minority communities get a greater understanding of. The first on that list is understand what we face. Um, and obviously, that comes, that's kind of a loaded thing, but I kind of concentrated it into 3 different categories. Understanding, what we face when it comes to, dealing with this pandemic and dealing with the issues that we have in coming with the pandemic. Again, it's ravaging minority communities at a higher rate. Infections, deaths, complications with other pre-existing conditions, the general inequality that we're seeing. the inequality that we see across the board, and how we are policed, and the economic gaps, and what we're seeing in how even how aid and relief is distributed. The amount of relief and the amount of aid that the average person has gotten versus the amount of relief and aid that corporations have gotten, and protections that corporations have gotten, the disparity between the two is gigantic, and small businesses have basically not even been factored. So understanding that inequality is not just racism. Inequality is an absence, just a void of being treated properly and fairly, and that really can fall to any subject that you want to, that you want to bring to the table. The third thing is that we face is the rebuild from here. Many people are going to lose, homes, lose vehicles. They're going to lose jobs and maybe not get them back. They're going to lose businesses and maybe not get them back. They might default on a loan. They may have to drop out of school. There's a lot of things that people are losing at a very high clip, and understanding that it is not just in the interest of the individual who's going through that to be able to rebuild, but um, it's a positive for the entire community. Every person who's able to come back from this is going to make the minority community a little bit stronger each time. Each person, the whole will become greater because of the strength of the individuals. The second thing that we should understand is understand our responsibility. Again, to speak on the COVID thing one last time, we need to understand, yes, the government has made its mistakes, and there are things that needed to be done that weren't done, and there are vaccines that people are working on that people may or may not take. There's all sorts of things that go with it. But this is December. The first time I heard the phrase COVID-19 was around the 22nd or 23rd of January. It's December now, almost mid-December. We have had so much information come out about this. We've had so much time to deal with it. There's almost no person in this country that doesn't own a mask. There isn't anybody that hasn't seen the effects of this. So at this point now, at what point does it become our responsibility to take care of what needs to be taken care of, and to not allow ourselves to fall into that COVID fatigue, and allow ourselves to do what needs to be done so that some of these businesses can stay open, and some of them can be able to, to help us out, and we can continue to help each other out by taking the precautions and taking care of things. When we're seeing the type of infection numbers that we're seeing right now, it's because people aren't doing what they need to do. That is a personal responsibility thing. One of the reasons why people haven't helped some of the Americans that have needed help is because they've fallen back on some of the old buzzword worthy kind of subject matter of, I believe in personal responsibility and people should be able to make decisions and do what they want to do. Yeah, well, they have. And we have seen the results of that. And the results of that has been more infections than we ever saw before, more deaths than we ever saw before. We grounded planes and went to war, over 3,000 Americans dying. And now we're seeing nearly 3,000 Americans die on a daily basis. And it's just a story on the news, and it's a shrug of the shoulders and well, what else can we do? We have to understand what our responsibilities are. You spoke on the violence that we're seeing in the minority community, the way that we are killing each other in greater numbers than any outside force could ever kill us. There is the police, that we're seeing police brutality, any violence that comes from any other outside race into your race. You're not seeing that level of violence as we're seeing, that you're seeing in, all over the country. So we have a responsibility to one another. I say it on every call, that we are our brother's keeper when it comes to these things. And, and that's not just immediate family, that's our community, and our ability to need, one another. We need one another to survive. We are a social creature. We are not a solitary isolationist creature, but we behave like isolationists. And there's so many things that set people off and set people in the wrong direction. And whether it is the mass media that we take in, whether it's the hopelessness of a down economy, or any other factor that may be hurting a minority community and forcing people, or opening up those avenues to people, we have a greater responsibility to one another than that. The growth in the community, the small business, without small business is nothing. We cannot, obviously can't rely just on the giant corporations, because they have failed us over and over again. And giant corporations, they're already at the mountaintop. They only have one goal at that point, and that is to continue to make money. There is no factor for us in that equation. So the need to see minorities grow and the need to see small businesses grow, it has to be there for us, and we're responsible for that. Information versus misinformation. At this point, we've spent years now dealing with the evils of misinformation and having people tell us one thing and it turns out this isn't even true, or hearing something that you thought was true and it wasn't, but you're already on this team, so you're not even going to listen to the other side, and you're not going to do any of those other things. At this point, we all know what exists. We all know what's out there. We all know what's going on. And there's a point of responsibility where we are in control of what we're taking in and what we're hearing and what we're doing with our information and what we're paying attention to, what we're willing to care about and not care about. With our first subject here, talking about those debates, that's another subject. That's another one of those things that falls into that. We have a responsibility to do something with the information that we have, and to cut through the noise and to cut through the misinformation, to actually focus on what is needed for our community and what's needed for our families, what's needed for ourselves. If we don't do that, then we are advocating our own responsibility. The third thing is understand what we want. What do we want of, I always bring up those four zones, ourselves, our family, our community, and our country. Well, what do we need to understand? What do we want from those things? It's easy to talk about what we want from our country. That's pretty easy. But what do we want to happen in our community? And do we know what it takes to get there? Do we know what we want for our family? Do we know what we want for ourselves going into 2021? Is there a plan? Is there a struggle that you may be going through right now that you want to make not a struggle anymore? Is there something going on that you're looking for? Is there something that you want to change about what's going on with you? And allow those things to filter out. And this is, this holiday season, with us going through all the things that we're going through, this is a time for that type of reflection, to truly understand what it is that we really want out of all the things that we do. My fourth one is understanding our power. And what I mean by understanding our power, we need to understand that we have an influence. We have an influence, in our own homes with our families, when we talk to our children and how we're raising them and how we're, growing their understanding. We have an influence with our immediate families when we talk to our families. If we understand things, if they've been infected by some of that misinformation, and we know what's real, and we're able to, help someone get through that, understand the power of our vote. We watch the power of our vote, and we watch how hard people have tried to fight and how hard people are fighting right now to take away those votes from people, because they understand the power of our vote as well. And understand the power of our spending power. Understand when we put our dollars behind our numbers of people, that we can move mountains. And our ability to spend that money in the community, spend it on small businesses, spend it on supporting one another and things like that. We know those are going to be the things that help lift us up and help keep people afloat during these down times, and help push us over the mountaintop when they are in good times. So definitely understanding our power is a big thing. And my last piece of understand how do we get there? How do we get to all of these things that I just said? One of the things I think is financial literacy. I think it would, whether you already know about stocks, whether you already know about how financial systems work, whether you know what the latest student loan informations are, where you live, wherever those things are, understanding and getting more literate in how your own personal finances work and your own stability is huge. Um, COVID awareness, understand, get the information, understand what's going on, be able to speak to it, be able to act to it in your own home. Um, sourcing out everything, source out your information, source out your news, source out, what you have going on. Any of the plans that you're planning, that you want to get, source it out. You know, dig deep and find out everything that you can know and understand everything that you can know about it so that you can make the most informed decisions for yourself and for your family, moving forward. And then being able to understand that change is not instant. Yes, we've had the election, we have, this new administration that's going to come in or whatever, and we have expectations of these people. How fast do we want that to happen? How much are we willing to put in to make those things happen? How fast are we looking to get the change that we're looking to see? And do we even know the timetables of how those things work? We are in an instant gratification society. I mean, I can push a couple of buttons on my phone and without ever pulling a dollar out of my wallet, order food, pay for food, and have somebody else that I've never seen before deliver it to my home without me even having to lift a finger. We live in an instant gratification society, but the problems that we face are not new problems. They're not instant problems. They were cultivated and grown and built over so many years and through so many different administrations of how these things were built and solidified and put in piece by piece, person by person. That sort of thing, that sort of pyramid is not brought down in a day. And we have to understand that the type of fight that we're in for to get that sort of change, this gratification will not be instant. And we must understand that and not be discouraged by it. There will be bumps in the road. We are going to stumble. We are going to fall on our way up this hill. But the goal is to get up the hill. And I believe we can do that if we, face all of our different things and we understand where we're at and we understand how to get there.
And that's some awesome points, and I feel like, as you said prior to, I feel like a lot of the things that we said, all this goes hand in hand with us reaching the level of equality, not just as a minority community, but as Americans in general, that we are looking forward to reach across the board. These are a lot of these things that we are speaking on are actions that need to take place to reach these levels. Um, One thing that you had put my eyeball on this week was Biden actually naming his defensive secretary this week. When we spoke on representation and things of that nature, he named General Lloyd Austin, as somebody who he wanted to be his defensive secretary. Now, as a minority community, we need to stand behind General Austin in Congress. He's having to go through Congress to actually receive a waiver to actually accept the position and be fully nominated for the position due to the fact I believe you have had to be out of the military for 7 years and he's only been out for 4 years. As a minority community, we should be pushing, our representatives across the nation to make sure that his waiver is approved, without a shadow of a doubt, and that he's able to be nominated to this position. It being, we've been asking for minorities to represent us at these different levels within Biden's cabinet. And this is one of, I could believe, the best picks that he could have made, overall to show gratification, for the push and the things that we have been doing to actually help him get elected in office. Um, as you say, closing out, going into the end of the year here, I believe we have a few more segments until we close out the year. And of course, we want to sit back and spend a little bit of time reflecting on the things as minorities and minority communities we've been able to accomplish this year towards our goals. So heading out, looking at COVID still running rampant. Uh, whatever, it's a holiday season, and there are people who are going without. Whatever you can do, as a minority within your own community, to whether it's help out one person, whether it's help out 5 people or more, do whatever you can to assist somebody else in making this holiday season a little bit easier on them and their family, especially with COVID, as I said, still going on. Um, when it comes to celebrating, holidays with your family, make sure that, you protect yourself, you protect everybody else who you're going to be around, especially as minorities with the count of us, the COVID cases being a little bit higher in our communities. Uh, we got to make sure that we take care of one another in that aspect, making sure we don't lose more people heading out into the end of the year.
Absolutely. And to a couple of things I wanted to say before we close up, as this will be our last meeting of 2020, and I wanted to take a second and reflect back on 2020 for a second. Obviously, when 2020 began, Minority Alliance Organization didn't exist. This was an organization that was brought together by the pain of these constant tragedies that have afflicted and infected our communities. And, coming from that, the biggest lesson that I've learned is that there is no change without tragedy, no advancement without trauma, and that from those things that we go through and from the pain that we, have to experience and have to go through, the anger that comes from, watching a person like George Floyd be killed on television, and from all the different things that we've seen, the marches, the beautiful symbolism, the brutality of a militarized police, the politics of misinformation, the euphoria of, triumphs over, certain adversities. All these different things are the character building blocks of a change. And it's a change that other people are invested in trying to stop. And we should be equally invested in keeping going. I think for, a group like Minority Alliance Organization, being able to get a foothold and at least, from the school drive that was done to some of the plans that are coming up, and even now with, just being able to support one another, being able to put positive messages across our board, we are not one of those hate groups. We're not one of those groups that, that peddles in advancing and grifting on the anger of the community, even though there's plenty of it there. We look for the positives. We look for the hope. We look for the esteem and the talent from being able to promote, people, in businesses like Yaya Rule and some of the others that we've been able to promote up there. And again, side note, don't forget, we still have that $25 gift card that will be available for someone is going to win that. Continue to post, continue to like and share and participate, and you'll get a chance to get a free gift card right around Christmas time. But, for some of the people that we've been able to promote and some of the people that we've been able to, kind of wake up to these things, if we wake up one person, then we've made an agent of change. And as I, Colin, as I tell you all the time, you never know which snowball you throw at the mountain is going to start the avalanche. But the avalanche is still going to come, and we're going to start to see some wonderful things as we go forward, and as we keep our heads up, and we understand that the pain and the anguish that the minority community goes through, we are the toughest people on earth. And we are a prideful people. We are an intelligent and a beautiful people with a strength that cannot be denied, it cannot be undercut, and it cannot be stopped. And the more we go into the year moving forward and all the different things that we're looking for, there will be people who will try and, focus even more energy into trying to stop it. And there will be organizations like this one, and there will be more voices that will be added, and there will be more movements that will be able to rise up and make sure that that never happens. So, I do want to say that as we go into the holiday season, we got to make sure we take care of each other. We got to make sure we take care of ourselves. Try to be safe out there. I know we want to go see some family. If it is safe to do so, go ahead and do so. If it is not safe to do so, please don't do that. We have Zoom, we have phone calls. It is just one holiday season, and we have to be able to. The best ability that we can have for our family is availability. So not getting COVID and being available for our family is more important than actually being there if that's what the occasion calls for. So we want to be able to do that. We have to let cooler heads prevail. We have to talk through our situations. We have to be able to communicate with one another. And as we head into the next year, we want to focus so much on one another and our community so that we can, achieve what we're looking for, and we can start to swing that pendulum more towards the progress that we're looking for. More progress, less pain is going to be a huge theme moving forward. So, that's what I'm hopeful for. And that's what I'm hopeful to see in the community. And I hope everyone has a great holiday season this year, whether it is you're celebrating, Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa, whatever it may be, that we are able to, take our time and reflect, take a deep breath, because it was a hell of a ride this year for everybody. Get a chance to, mourn those that we lost, get a chance to pray for those that are hurting, and, get a chance to put some things together for ourselves for the upcoming year.
Yes, sir. And as always, thank everybody again for participating. Thank everybody for helping move this organization along. And as you say, 2020 has been a roller coaster, up and downs. And through this organization, I'm glad we've been able to give back in the ways that we've been able to give back to people in different areas. And as you said, going into next year, let's continue to promote, positivity coming out of our community, and to be able to bounce back from this COVID pandemic going into next year a lot better, from the minority community even stronger.
Absolutely. Everybody take care of this holiday season. Everybody be well.